Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the very first talk of the 2026 Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival. A couple of little quick things before I introduce our speaker today is, as you're spending your day, at some point, go through those doors, or that door, and across the hall. And this is one of the stops on the quilt trail that begins at the Masonic Lodge, but this is one of the stops. And the quilter in there from Branson is quite amazing, so go and talk to her about her work and see what she's got. Then, my name is Cindy Wilson. I've given talks here in the past over the last couple of years, and my books put some historical context on the kind of things that Laura Ingalls Wilder talked about in her novels, The Long Winter and By the Shores of Silver Lake. And today I have the honor of introducing our first speaker and my friend, Mary Pat Kleven, who's going to put historical context on the entire Little House series through the music. Mary Pat is the past president of the Minnesota State Fiddlers Association and is also an active member of the Laura Ingalls Wilder Legacy and Research Association. And you're in for a real treat today because she'll not only be telling us about the music of the Little House, but we'll be listening to those songs and learning about the regional accents of fiddle music. So please welcome Mary Pat as she tells us about Pa's Real Fiddle.
Like this. Hi there. Can you hear me? Oh, good. Man, Karen's good. Thank you. This is really fun. I've not been to the Cherry Blossom Festival before, and I get to be the first speaker, so this is just really cool. This is the closest thing I came to cherry blossoms. It's a Hawaiian shirt. Best thing I had in my closet for that. So, so today I wanted to talk a little bit. A little bit about Pa's music from the Little House series, since I'm gonna guess most of you are pretty familiar with this. But just to make sure we bring everybody up to speed, Laura Ingalls Wilder was born in 1867 in Pepin, Wisconsin. That's up in the very northwestern part of the state, not too far from the Twin Cities, actually. She died in 1957 in Mansfield, not far from here. She wrote a basic autobiographical manuscript in the 1930s called Pioneer Girl. So this draft covered her many adventures as a young woman, swept up in the expansion of the United States into the West, which was considered Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, and South Dakota in the late 1800s. So she then worked with her very accomplished, we should be moving slides, right? So Karen, let's start with the first slide. I'm looking at something different. There we go. Okay, so that's the first one. Next slide. There we go. So she worked with her very accomplished writer, author, editor, Rose Lane, and they crafted 8 books from this basic manuscript of Laura's adventures that became the very beloved Little House on the Prairie series, or what we call the Little House Children's Book series. So now in this series, some stories were accurate, and some were not. And so today we have that really fun, interesting challenge to try to uncover what was factual and maybe what was literary license. Now, next slide. Throughout the books, she talks about her father, Charles. Pa, as he's affectionately known, Ingalls, he's this larger-than-life character, right? He's a father, husband, hunter, farmer, builder. He just does it all. But of course, he's also the fiddler. His fiddle music just kind of weaves in and out of these stories. It provides this wonderful context, whether it is a time of calm or a time of stress, whether they're celebrating something, whether they're being reverent, whatever the activity is going on in the story, Pa's fiddle music just kind of adds that extra wonderful literary element to make the stories really come to life. Next one. There we go. Now, I'm also a fiddler, and I have lived pretty much everywhere Pa has lived. I made this chart a little while ago, and now I have to remember which one are the gold stars and which one are the purple stars. I'm pretty sure, I know it's only 9 in the morning, I'm pretty sure I'm all the gold stars and Pa's all the purple stars, but you can see that a century and a half later, I've pretty much lived in all of the areas that Pa has lived. So clearly I understand the cultural background that Charles was living in. Next one. There we go. And as a fiddler, I've become really immersed in what we call the Upper Midwest folk fiddle style. So as Cindy was saying, I'm the past president of the Minnesota State Fiddlers Association. I play in a band called Hoof on the Roof. I have organized a group in Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm from, called the Scandi-Am Jam. We were called the Scandinavian American Old Time Dance Music Ensemble, but when we were playing gigs, they could not fit it on the sign. So we decided we better shorten it up. So we play the Scandinavian American music. That's kind of the roots music of the area. And I've just started a group called the Nordic Lights Dance Band. We're a little bit smaller offshoot of the Scandi-Am Jam, and we're going out and performing, researching and performing a lot of music of this era. So in addition, I've done like the Upper Midwest Folk Fiddle Fest. I'm researching a fiddler called Iva Dingwall from very northern Wisconsin. I'm working on a project called Fiddlers of the Driftless. Pa lived in the Driftless area of Wisconsin and worked on fiddle contests throughout the Upper Midwest. So really have been immersed in a lot of this. I think we can go to the next slide. We can also silence our cell phones. I turned mine off because you know what's going to happen, right? While I'm standing up here, that's when my husband decides he needs to know something right now. So, we've all been there, ladies. We've all been there. I also have been hanging out a lot now that I'm in the Madison area with the folklorists at the University of Wisconsin Center for Studies of Upper Midwest Cultures. It's a fairly new program, started in 2010. Which an offshoot of that is sustaining Scandinavian studies. I even had the opportunity as an older adult to be able to audit a folklore class called Local Cultures of the Upper Midwest. So I have let all of my fiddle friends know that now that I've taken a college class, I will be absolutely impossible to live with. I will start quoting, well, did you know? And they're like, oh, just sit down and play your fiddle, Mary Beth. So at any rate, with all of this, we don't have our, oh, we're having problems. That's all right. So now you would think with all of this, right, you would think, I'm hanging out with other people who do Upper Midwest fiddling. I've lived every place Pa lived. I'm immersing myself with people who are studying this culture, playing all these tunes. I'm out there playing. You would think that Pa would be our superstar, right? You would think that we're in a jam. Someone would be like, yeah, man, we're going to play some of those tunes from Little House. We would be calling, yep, I studied some of Pa's stuff. I'd be doing these presentations. People would be asking us to do that stuff. That's what you would think would happen. The reality is what happened is when I talk to people who play Upper Midwest music is I get crickets. No one is playing Pa's music. No one talks about Pa. No one's really familiar with Pa's music. He's cited in a couple of historical books. One book written by one of the folklorists at the university. There's really no materials. I looked through the library at the university, didn't really see any materials on him. And he just isn't somebody that we talk about when we all get together. So because I have my foot in both worlds, right? I've been involved with the Laura stuff, having been involved with Laura Days and Pepin, running their fiddle contest. So I was pretty familiar with getting involved with the ladies at the Laura Ingalls Wilder, well, not all ladies, Laura Ingalls Wilder's Legacy and Research Association, and then also become the fiddling. I ended up asking my question, why is this the case? Why is there just really no interest in the Upper Midwest fiddling circles in Upper Midwest music? So in this, so I've been struggling with this. I'm going through, I've been spending, since 2019, I've been spending time going through the books and researching the tunes and trying to figure out where in the Upper Midwest they might have come from. I'm looking at all these little references to tunes and dances and things that Laura talks about. And I also decided that I was probably pulling at the wrong thread, that instead of looking at it from my perspective as an Upper Midwest fiddler, I had to stop and look at it the perspective of Laura as the author. So I put myself in Laura's shoes, and this has been a recent revelation. So I put myself in Laura's shoes. All right, She's hanging out in Mansfield. She is not a fiddler. She is getting bugged by her daughter to add more content, add more detail, add more to the stories to make them more interesting. In her autobiographical manuscript, she really didn't talk a lot about Pa's fiddling. It really comes to life in the stories. So she's being asked to add all this content. In addition, her publisher is saying, you need to give me stuff that our lawyers say is okay to put in there. Okay, and I'm like, that is a problem that still happens today, right? So it still was that copyright rules have changed, but not that much. So they still needed to make sure that she could cite where. So all the lyrics that are in the books have all been lawyer approved. Folklorists are like, so does that mean, was that what they're really saying, or is that what the publisher said she could print? So when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like, how would she get all this material? It would make sense that she would be drawing her inspiration and references from the fiddlers that she's hearing around her, which would be the fiddlers in the Ozarks in the 1930s. And when I looked at that perspective, all of a sudden these tunes started to make more sense, a little more sense. It's still a bit of a hybrid that they've got going there, but it made a little more sense. So what added to this was the fact that when I started looking at who was excited, who was out there in the music world that was excited about Pa's fiddling, it was the folklorists from the South. So a book that I was reading and I loved it. Oh, we got to keep flipping here. Okay, keep flipping. Next. That's Pa the superstar? Not. I kind of like that image. That's what I hear. That's what I hear when I talk about Pa. Next. And Laura doing her writing. Next. There we go. Okay, this is the good one. Here are all the people that are talking about Pa's fiddling. All right, so Howard White Marshall, very esteemed folklorist, wrote this wonderful book, Play Me Something Quick and Devilish, The History of Fiddling in Missouri. It was fascinating. I loved it. He has many pages dedicated to the books from the Little House series and how they still play them in the Ozarks today. How about that? And also a big section on Rose and the works that she did in researching Ozark songs and publishing those as well. Makes sense. Rose was doing that research for the books, so she also published them. We see this in a lot of stuff that Rose did. So I thought, oh, well, this is making a lot of sense, that they're studying the music of this area and putting it, in the books. Another one was Pa's Fiddle, the Pa's Fiddle Project. A lot of us have all the CDs. We listen to them all the time. This one was a project that was done with noted Professor Emeritus and musicologist Dale Cockrell from Vanderbilt University in Nashville. And he did an extensive book. He did a recording. And interestingly enough, in the Pa's Fiddle Project, the recordings were all done in Nashville in the bluegrass style, which really doesn't make sense to an upper Midwest fiddler, and you'll see why in a minute, but makes a ton of sense if you're talking about someone who has music that's basically Southern, because that's the natural evolution. It's like you naturally take these tunes, and the next step is you play them in a bluegrass style. So then it made perfect sense to me as to why the music was recorded the way it was. And of course, nationally known old-time musician and dancer Phil Jameson wrote this book on Southern dances, hoedowns, reels, and frolics, great history of Southern dances. And the only time he talks about a Northern dance, it's the 3 mentions he makes of the dance at Grandpa's in the Little House book. And he says that to say, look, these traditions went north. And I'm like, maybe not. Or the author of the Little House series was right there in Missouri and was depicting a dance that was happening in Missouri, which is why this dance makes a lot of sense to a dance historian. So these are just little mentions that got me thinking that maybe I'm on the right track. So this tells me that the experts from these area, from this regional area of the country, were much more drawn to Pa's fiddling. That the tunes spoke to them. the way they don't speak to Upper Midwest fiddlers, and they identified with this culture. So, all right, so what's the big deal? Let's move on to the next one. What's the big deal? What's the big deal, Mary Pat? What's the big difference between the Upper Midwest? Well, I kind of gave you the hint in the fact that I play in a group called the Scandi-Am group. It's the Scandinavians. It's the Scandies. So I found this chart and I really liked it because it, I think, gives a great depiction of why culture in the Upper Midwest developed differently. This is a census. The Census Bureau in 2012 asked people what their regional what their ancestry was. Okay, what's your ancestry? And so these are all. So we have the Finns up on the top. You see all those really dark squares, and that's where they still are today. They all showed up at the same time as Pa. Those are the Swedes. That's I don't know why that turned out yellow, but yeah, the Swedes. You can see all the dark stuff way up in the top. Look at all the look at all the Norskies. Holy smokes! I married one. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so it's kind of hard to live in Minnesota and not meet a Norwegian guy. All right. So anyway, so Norwegian and Danish as well. So these four Scandinavian groups came at the same time Pa was coming and are mentioned, especially the Swedes and the Norwegians, are mentioned in the books. They were his neighbors. So this is what makes the traditional music from the area quite different. We can go to the next one. And as compared to the African American population, and we know that African American music is a huge influence on American traditional music. And so you can see in 1900 and 2020, we still have a huge influence of African American music in the South versus the North. So these are the traditions that really make a difference between the two areas. The next one. This is what complicates things. So the Irish are everywhere, right? And this wasn't even taken on March 17th, where everybody's Irish. Except the Norwegians, they're always still Norwegian. But the Irish, everybody's Irish. So the Irish are everywhere. So their music is everywhere. So you hear an Irish tune in Missouri, and you hear an Irish tune in Wisconsin, and you start thinking, well, which is it? So you're not quite sure what it is. The same thing happened with the Germans. The Germans were everywhere. So their traditions kind of came on top of some of the other traditions as well. Next slide. The other complication is the minstrelsy, and we did a program recently on the blackface minstrelsy on the prairie, talking a little bit more about this particular scene in Little House on the Prairie. Minstrel tunes were wildly popular, and they were actually way more popular in the North than they were in the South. They started in New York, and so this particular scene is from the books taken. The story takes place in De Smet, South Dakota, in like 1883, and it absolutely happened. And so there's definitely minstrel tunes that are in the book, and those are probably legit. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit complicated when we start looking at what was the kind of music that Pa would have actually been exposed to. All right, next slide. All right, so what are the differences? All right, Celtic, traditional Ozarks fiddle music is going to be more Celtic, English, French, German with strong African American influences. That's kind of the blend, that wonderful, delicious blend that happens here that makes the music so awesome. So awesome. Real driving rhythms with short saw strokes, right? Okay? Yeah, you guys know it. You guys know this. The dances are square dances, hoedowns. And those are fast dances, 2/4/4/4. Some waltzes were added in, not nearly as many in the Upper Midwest, and two-steps came later. This would be after Pa. There were two-steps that came in as well. The main instruments would be fiddle, guitar, harmonica, banjo, bass, and mandolin. So that's kind of and there's going to be additions, subtractions, and played in what we call the open keys. So the open strings of the fiddle, G, D, A, and of course C, in standard tuning. So not a lot of cross tuning around here, meaning that we tune the instrument with differently. So that would be more of a traditional Ozarks fiddle music. Traditional Upper Midwest fiddle music, also Celtic, English, French, and German with strong Scandinavian influences. What's the difference? It's a smoother style with more lilt, just how the Scandies played it. more round dances. We got square dances here, we got round dancing. And Laura talks about round dances. She talks about dancing the round dances nicely, both with her sister, both in Pepin and in Walnut Grove. And what she means is she did the waltzes, schottisches, hop waltzes, which came before polkas, turned into polkas, hop waltzes and polkas. These are all 3/4 time, 4/4 time, and again, the two-step, much like in Missouri, was added in a little bit later. Fiddle, accordion, and button box, guitar, mando, bass, and cello. So these were the instruments that were most commonly played. Played in the open keys, but also added F and B flat. Don't know why. Just to be fun, I guess. Probably because of the accordion. The accordion is super flexible. The banjo is not. The banjo needs to continually retune. And so the band, we tend to, in Southern music, when I play in one of the old time Southern jams, I gotta stay in one key. We stay in one key for like an hour, right? Because we just are trying to be nice to the banjo players. In upper Midwest music, yeah, we don't care. Bouncing around all the time. Not only are we bouncing around from tune to tune, we are bouncing around within a tune. Within a tune, it will change key. I have a polka that we play that changes key 3 times. We're constantly bouncing around. We can because the fiddle can and the accordion can, and so those are the ones. So they did that. This would, in the South, banjo players would get up, pack their instruments, and be leaving the jam after the first couple of tunes. Okay, next one. Oh, good, this is where we get to play. All right, yay, enough talking. Enough talking. So this is what I didn't get to do at Lollapalooza. I did a presentation at Lollapalooza, and this is where I had to end. And everyone was like, but you didn't play. And I said, well, you only gave me 20 minutes. So, so this is, ladies, this is what you missed. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding them. Okay, so first of all, why don't we play? I'm going to play a couple of tunes. And I have the music, not that I haven't memorized the tunes, but I can never remember how they start. Once I get them started, then I'm good. Okay, I'm gonna play a couple of tunes that would be more Ozark style. So that gives you kind of a comparison. I was warming up with one of them earlier for those who came earlier. Camp meeting at the 4th of July. Nice short, nice, could you just kind of picture a nice square dance going to that, right? It's like you can just picture that key of D. Got another one in key of D. I actually decided to play 2. I was at a festival, and I hadn't played this tune in years. The guy next to me goes, oh, let's play this tune. And he starts playing it, and I'm like, oh, I gotta play this. Gotta play this in Missouri, man. It's called Missouri Mud. So you can hear it like just really driving and fast and like, you missed a couple notes, who cares? As long as the dancers can keep dancing and they hear that rhythm and they can, the caller can just keep calling the dances, it's all good. Okay, so let's do a tune here from the dance at Mr. Hewlett's. The next door neighbor of Laura in Pepin was Irish and was put in the manuscript, was left out of the stories. The dance was left out of the stories. So I did some real searching on what kind of Irish music would have occurred at that time. And you gotta really dig. And this is really hard because the Irish were pretty oppressed and they just left, right? They were starving, they just left. So I finally heard at an Irish festival from an Irish fiddler in the Twin Cities asked this question. They said, well, the Irish were still playing, were playing Scottish and English music at that time because they were oppressed. The British were trying to wipe out their culture, and so they were still playing some of the, like acceptable tunes. It wasn't until the 1900s, both in Ireland and here, where the Irish finally said, forget it, we're gonna learn our own culture and learn Irish stuff. So the stuff you hear in March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, all this kind of like your favorite Irish tunes, really are ones that were revived in the early 1900s and were popularized by the chieftains in the 1970s. So that's what you're hearing. So that doesn't help. So what that helps me is that it tells me that what they probably played were more Scottish tunes, because Pa played along with them, and he wouldn't have known all these kind of obscure traditional Irish tunes, but Pa was playing along with them. So I'm gonna do a set, Haste to the Wedding, which is in the books, that they play it. They say that Pa played Laura to her wedding playing this tune. He probably did. Maybe did, maybe didn't, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to play it with a tune called Honest John. And this is a tune that isn't in the Laura books, but was written in the books by Ham Garland from near La Crosse. He was a Pulitzer Prize writer at about the same time as Laura, who did, his autobiographical stuff was also from the upper Midwest, and it kind of gives a little bit a different take on what was going on socially and economically at that time. But he talked about his uncle who was a fiddler, and Honest John was one of the tunes that he played, so I'm going to put them together. Let's see if this works. I'm in D, and then I go to G. Why not? Thank you. All right, so here's a Swedish tune, because his neighbors in Pepin were Swedish. The Pepin area is very Swedish. In fact, I think this was maybe in his manuscript. I don't recall if it was in the books as well, where Pa was giving Laura a hard time that she was coming back to the house after visiting the Swedish neighbors, and she was coming back speaking a Swedish brogue. And so Pa was giving her a hard time, like, you're going to turn Swedish, kid. So the Swedish neighbor lady had cookies, so Laura was over there all the time. Any rate, so this is a tune, it's a waltz called Kvarsvalsen. I have a friend who is got a project called Nordic Newcomers, where she's actually studying what original tunes were brought over by immigrants to the upper Midwest. And this is a tune that she's indicated did come over. So I can't say this is exactly what the Swedish neighbor would have played, but it would have been something very much like this. The fun thing about this is a tune that we still play, because a Norwegian American band in the 90s did a parody of this with a song. And I now, when I play this, people in Wisconsin will start singing it. And the last time I played this tune in a gig, someone said, you know, I was visiting Norway and heard this song, the parody, on the radio. So apparently this tune has gotten around. So I will play it the straight way. I won't play the parody way. But I will be thinking the words in my head. Sorry about that. Thanks. So you can hear this is much smoother. So you can, if you think back to when I was playing the Ozark music, so clearly some more smooth. And I was doing what they called lilt, which is a little bit of a lift. So rather than bow really kind of, you know, going down and the rosin is flying, there's a little bit more lift and a lilt to it. And this would be, so you can kind of imagine Laura dancing around in the cabin in Pepin while her dad is teaching her the waltz. It's the kind of the waltz that she would have done. So moving on to Walnut Grove, Pa would have had, they had Norwegian neighbors. And there was the story of how Caroline could talk, the Caroline only knew English, the Norwegian neighbors only knew Norwegian, but they could talk to each other. They'd kind of come up with sort of this mixed language, that she knew enough Norwegian words and the neighbor knew enough English words that they could kind of just, you know, communicate. And Laura was like, how does that work? And it's like, well, that's called survival. And so I did a project about 10 years ago, where I was studying the music that, a music collection that the Minnesota State Fiddlers Association had acquired from a gentleman called Elmo Wick. And his family lived about 90 miles north of Walnut Grove. And so after I did this project, it occurred to me that some of the tunes that Elmo attributed to his grandfather would have been Norwegian tunes that would have been in the area at about the time Pa would have been in the area. So again, I can't say that these are the tunes that the Norwegian neighbors would have played or would have been hanging, but the style and the kind of music is the kind of Norwegian music that Pa would have encountered. I'm going to do a schottisch because when we're not doing waltzes, we're doing schottisches, okay? That's the other, you know, big kind of dance step we're doing. And they're still really big in the upper Midwest. I was just warming up with my group before doing a session in the hallway of this big hotel where we were just going to do an open mic or something like that. And I said, let's play the schottisch. We played the schottisch. People walking by were just like walking by, and all of a sudden did this. And and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am in Minnesota. So I asked one of my friends, he goes, we all learned the schottisch in 6th grade gym class. And so it's like just kind of ingrained. So everybody does the schottisch. And so it's become one of the more popular dances. So this one's called From Hallingdal, which is in Minnesota, From Hallingdal to Minnesota. All right. thank you. Fun little schottisch. All right. Oh, we got to do a polka. So, you know, the state music, the state tune, the state song or whatever of Wisconsin is a polka. Oh, I must be the only one. Everyone else has something else. All right, so we've covered I didn't do Finnish. I could have done Finnish. I don't think Pa ran into a lot of Finns. He was smart. He head south. The Finns all went north. We're like, really? They're still there. They're still there. We love them. But that's where they all are, up in the upper peninsula of Michigan, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota. But I want to play a Danish tune because there's a lot of Danes, and especially when Pa was traveling through Iowa, heading into South Dakota, very heavily Danish. And if you notice the picture I had, lots of Danes there. I did want to let you know there was an anomaly in that picture that I had to ask a friend of mine. There were a whole lot of Danes in Utah. And I'm like, so I have a friend who's Mormon. And I said, what's up with that? And he said, the Mormons sent missionaries to Denmark back during the whole immigration wave and encouraged people to move to Utah as they were forming these Mormon colonies. So it makes a lot of sense because he's had me do some of the Western pioneer music. Much of this is a tradition that's been upheld by the Mormons. There's a lot of Danish tunes in there, and I thought that was just kind of a fun thing. I didn't realize that they're like really Danish. So that's a little bit of an anomaly. Most of the Danes did stay in the upper Midwest, and they're around the Iowa, South Dakota, area. So this is a tune picked up from Dwight Lamb. He lived in western Iowa, so this would have been a little closer to Pa's, Sioux Fall days. It's not Sioux Fall, it's South Dakota days. And this is a tune that he picked up from his grandfather. One of the cool things about Dwight is that as an older gentleman, he just started remembering tunes that his grandfather had played. So he started playing them, he started recording them. These tunes got over to Denmark. The Danish folklorists went, we haven't heard that one before. So they fly to Iowa and say, we got to meet this guy. And it turns out that his grandfather came from a family of very well-known musicians. Dwight had remembered his tunes, and they had lost a lot of this information. So they ended up flying Dwight back to Denmark 5 times to meet with folklorists, to remember tunes, to play them. They recorded them, they transcribed them, put together tune books, and basically kept this tradition alive. And they figured out where Dwight's grandfather came from. And it was kind of fun. They loved the fact that they said, just this little old guy who used to work for the post office living in Ottawa, Iowa, kind of held in his head this treasure trove of Danish tunes. So needless to say, they become really popular in the upper Midwest, and he's kind of one of our heroes. So I'm going to do 2 polkas for you. One is called the Brand New Polka, which we think is a great name for a traditional tune. I think it was named because Dwight, from what I understand, Dwight would hang out with the folklorists, and he would just start playing a tune. And they'd say, do you know the name of this one? And they no. So they would name a lot of them. No, I don't know the name of this one. And so then, so this particular one he played, and he started playing, and his pal's like, well, that sounds like, well, we haven't heard this one before. Well, here's a brand new one for you. Here's a brand new one for you. And he just starts playing these tunes. So they named it the Brand New Polka, because they had not heard it before. So, Brand New and Susanna. All right, I got one more for you. So one of the things that we know that Pa did, and this happened a lot with fiddlers, is that they would take tunes and then they would repurpose them. And so it's like, as long as you learned a tune, let's just play it in a bunch of different ways. And so we see this a lot in Upper Midwest music. I think it was just a practical thing that people did. One of my favorites is Logger's Breakdown is a Canadian reel that is played as a reel for a square dance. It's called Polka After Andrew Wick when you play it as a polka. And it's called, whatever Schottish, I forget the name of the Schottish. At any rate, it's played Sadder Schottish when you play it as a Schottish. It's the exact same tune, but it's a kind of like, you know, you're kind of knowing your group like, oh, they need a polka, they need a Schottish. So you take the exact same tune and then you play it different ways. So in the Little House book, the tune that's most notable for that is the Home Waltz. And so we know that he sang Home Sweet Home in the Little House in the Big Woods book, but it's also very likely that when he was playing dances, that the last dance of the evening would have been the Home Waltz, which is a waltz that's basically based on the tune Home Sweet Home. We found this in a number of Upper Midwest fiddlers' tune books. This is where we get a lot of our information, fiddlers who left behind little handwritten tune books, and so we found this in other people's tune books, so we know this was kind of the last waltz, which will end up this presentation. We'll have a minute for questions, and then we'll move on to the next. So, Home Waltz. There you go. That's when you go find the one that brought you to the dance and you head on back. So we do have just a couple of minutes for if there's any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I've got a question. The button, because you talked about the accordion and the button box. Was the button box a thing that they, and, okay,
Yep. Yeah, that's the smaller one. Yeah.
okay. My grandfather was all German, and he played the button box, the piano, and the fiddle by ear.
Nice.
Now,
Nice.
the funny part is, and I have his fiddle, they had gone to a farm auction, and he bought this fiddle for 50 cents, and it was in a case that was kind of coffin-like, that was cardboard with horsehair in it. Okay, well, there was no bow, so my mother, downtown Kansas City, it cost her $5 for a bow, so he could play it, so it was always the 50-cent violin, the $5 bow. Inside that violin, there's a little paper that shows it was, basically it's